Okay, so for my fractured fairy tale, I chose Goldilocks. Once upon a time, three bears lived in a nice little house in a great forest. There was the father bear, the mother bear, and the baby bear. They had each a bed to sleep in, a chair to sit on, and a bowl and spoon for eating milk or honey, which was their favorite food. One morning, the three bears resolved on taking a walk before breakfast. But before they went out, they poured their warm milk into their basins that it might get cool by the time they come back. Mr. and Mrs. Bear walked arm in arm, and Baby ran by their side. "What a gloomy, sad day it is," growled Mr. Bear. "Oh, what a fine day it is," said Mrs. Bear. "What a fine day," squeaked Little Bear. And so it was. The sun shone brightly through, it was low in the sky, and its rays glittered on the fine webs on the grass. The leaves shivered in the soft breeze, the wood pigeon cooed, the lark sang loud enough to make himself hoarse, the sparrows chirped, the bee buzzed, and a yellow butterfly perched on Great Bear's nose. "What a sad-looking butterfly he is squeaking," said Big Bear, as he sluggishly brushed off the butterfly. "Must be nice to not have a deep voice like mine." "No," said Mrs. Bear, "you have a much finer voice than the lark. I should like to hear him growl as you do." "Oh, my dear, you are too kind to me. My growl is awful compared to the lion's. Say, honey, are we almost back? I'm ready to crawl back in bed," said Big Bear. "Of course not. We are just beginning," replied Mrs. Bear. And thus conversing, the bears walked on. Now there lived in the same forest a sweet little girl who was called Goldilocks. She was the woodman's daughter, and her hair looked just like the sunbeams. She knew every tree in the greenwood, and every flower in the woods loved Goldilocks. The trees bent down their lower branches to touch her glittering head as she passed. The birds sang sweeter as she glided by. The lark's song in the sky was, come up, Goldilocks, here's your happy home." "Coo, I love you, coo, I love you," cooed the wood pigeons as she passed. "Twit, twit, pretty child," said the sparrow. "Oh, you darling," said the blackbird, and Goldilocks laughed with glee, for she liked to be loved. As to the butterflies, they flew after her and rested on her hair and tickled her cheeks, but she never tried to catch them. She would not frighten or vex them for anything. She loved all the creatures, and that is why they loved her. Love makes love. However, there was something special about Goldilocks. Sometimes, when she would be out in the woods, she would have imaginary friends join her. They were not real, but to her they were. Sometimes she would even see things that weren't actually there. But Goldilocks would stroll through the woods, singing merrily through the greenwood, saying sometimes to herself, "I wish I could sing as well as the lark." By and by, little Goldilocks reached the bear's house. She had never seen it before, and she wondered who lived there. A window was open, and Goldilocks peeped in. Although she was alone, Goldilocks looked to the side of her and said, "Shh, all of you, be quiet. Someone could be inside." "Dear me," thought the child, "whose house can it be? There's a table and 3 chairs and 3 basins of hot milk, all steaming, and nobody to drink it. But I don't see any work or books or anything else. I think I will go in and see who lives there." So she tapped at the door and cried, "Is anyone at home?" But there was no answer. Then Goldilocks stepped in very carefully, waving for her friends to follow behind her. Goldilocks looked about the house. She could hear people whispering things in her ear, but didn't see anyone. She could not see anyone nor hear anybody snoring, so she walked into the bears' parlor. There was a fire which made the room cheerful, and the hot milk looked very inviting. It quite seemed to say, "Come and have some breakfast," and the early spring air had made Goldilocks rather cold and very hungry. So she sat down by the fire in the little bear's chair. It was too small for her, but she did not quite sit down at first. In a moment she got up again and went round the table and tasted the milk in all of the bowls. Little Bear's was the nicest because it had sugar in it, and Goldilocks thought it was good. So she took the bowl and sat down again in Little Bear's chair, took his spoon, and ate up all his milk. Now, this was very wrong. A tiny bear is only a tiny bear. Still, he has a right to keep his own things. But Goldilocks did not know any better. Unluckily, Baby Bear's chair was, as we have said, too small for her. She broke the seat and fell through, basin and all. Then Goldilocks went upstairs, and there she saw 3 beds in a row. Goldilocks looked at her imaginary friends and told them to lay down and take a nap before we leave. Goldilocks laid down on Father Bear's bed first, but that was too long for her. Then she lay down on Mother Bear's bed, and that was too wide for her. Last of all, she lay down on Baby Bear's bed, and there she fell asleep, for she was tired. By and by the bears came home. Baby Bear saw that his chair was broken and thrown down, and he cried in a very squeaky voice, "Somebody has been here." And Father Bear growled with sad and dreary eyes, "Somebody has been here." And Mother Bear growled, agitated, "Somebody has been here." And they went to the table and looked at their breakfast. And Father Bear growled, "Who has touched my bowl?" And Mother Bear growled, "Who has touched my bowl? I have already organized them perfectly 12 times before we left. Now I have to start all over and reorganize everything in this house." And Tiny Bear squeaked, "Somebody has broken mine." And then Tiny Bear began to cry, for he was very fond of his own bowl and his own chair, and besides, he was very hungry after his long walk in the forest. It really did seem a shame. Then the 3 bears thought they would go over their house to see who had been in it and to try if they could find the thief. They went upstairs to their bedroom, which was over their other room, and as soon as they saw the tumbled beds, Father Bear growled, "Who has been lying in my bed? I just wanted to go to sleep all day." And Mother Bear growled, "Who has been lying on my bed? My sheets are a mess, and I made the bed perfectly before we left. It took me over an hour to get them perfect, no wrinkles and blankets perfectly. I'm going to have to redo it." Tiny Bear squeaked out, "Oh, here is a little girl in my bed, and it must be she who has eaten my breakfast and broken my chair." Then Father Bear growled, "Let us eat her up." And Mother Bear growled, "Let us eat her up." And Tiny Bear squeaked, "Let us eat her up." The noise they made woke Goldilocks, and you may imagine how frightened she was when she saw the 3 bears. She started out of bed and jumped at once out of the window. The bears rushed after her, and Father Bear caught her golden hair in his teeth, but she left a lock behind and still ran on. Then the 3 bears all jumped out after her, but they fell one on top of the other and rolled over and over, and while they were picking themselves up, little Goldilocks ran home, and they were not able to catch her. But I do not think she had acted rightly. Though she did not deserve to be eaten up, it was very wrong to break Little Bear's chair and eat his milk. And I think Goldilocks will have to take great care to keep out of reach of the 3 bears. After a long day, Goldilocks was able to lay her head down on her own bed while discussing the day's adventure with her friends. On the other hand, Mrs. Bear was busy reorganizing the house just perfect so she would be able to rest easy that night, while Papa Bear sluggishly crawled back in bed with a heavy, sad, and worrisome heart. Little Bear was happy to be home and have his bed back. He laid next to Papa Bear and peacefully fell asleep. So, Goldilocks in this story, in this fractured fairy tale, had schizophrenia, and a few of the treatments that can be used are variations of medications and therapy. However, typically they are lifelong treatments that will be required. Psychotherapy has also been found to be successful, as well as family therapy, behavior therapy, and group psychotherapy. Big Bear has clinical depression. Treatment options can include therapy, a variety of medications, and many times medical professionals will use a combination of both therapy and medications to treat depression. And sometimes even a medical procedure called electroconvulsive therapy may be used. Therapies can include behavior therapy and psychotherapy, and many of the medications used to treat depression are SSRIs and antidepressants. And finally, Mama Bear suffered from obsessive compulsive disorder, or OCD. And some of the treatments typically involve self-care and therapy. A variety of medications can also be used to ease the symptoms of OCD, such as SSRIs and antidepressants. However, different therapies can also include support groups, cognitive behavioral therapies, aversion therapy, psychoeducation, and rational emotive behavior therapy.